So welcome everybody to the show today. So today I'm delighted to welcome Kerstin Cable. So Kerstin is, among other things, she's the host of the Fluent Language podcast. Is that the official name of the podcast?
It's called The Fluent Show.
Oh, the Fluent Show. Okay, so her website is Fluent Language. Is that your website?
That's it. Yes, the website is fluentlanguage.co.uk.
Fluentlanguage.co.uk, and the show is the Fluent Show. And I was very impressed to see how many reviews you had on your podcast on Apple. So I know that a lot of people must be watching, listening to it. And also in particular, she's going to be talking to us today about how to create and market an online course, because that's something that I personally am particularly interested, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers and listeners will be interested in as well. So, so would you like to start, Kerstin, just by sort of saying a bit about your story, how you got to be at this, place in your career where you are now?
Yes, thanks. Thanks for having me, Keith. Thank you very much. You've already introduced me very well. That's essentially what we need to know. I work for myself, and in general, I now say I help people learn languages. And a lot of the work that I do is not, you can come to me for a German course. I've got plenty of German courses. German is my native language, and I like teaching German, and I teach German with a particular level of attention to the English that kind of brings you to German. So I teach German a little bit differently, but it's been quite successful in the past. But my passion, the thing that really gets me excited, is when adults learn languages even though they don't have to, and they do it as a challenge, or do it as there's something that drives you to it. And it is a really challenging hobby. It is learning something new, and I love learning, and learning makes me very happy. So over the years, I started off as a German tutor, and then sort of started specializing in just helping people with study methods and with the learning mindset and the psychology behind it. So now a lot of the work that I do and the courses that I create, the programs that I create, center around that as well.
Okay, so let's jump in and talk about languages for a bit, because I love languages. And I remember at school I had the choice between doing Spanish O level and German O level, and I was quite interested in Spanish, but my father said, well, actually German's like a more intelligent language, or you'll impress more people if you speak German than Spanish. So I ended up learning German, which I sort of regret now, because 350 million people, I think, speak Spanish as a first language, and it's got more. There's more films and music, and there's more. For a holiday destination, it's sunnier. There's sunnier places in Spain. So I ended up learning sort of Spanish later on in life. But and also the other main language I learned was German. I did school exchange 3 times to Germany. And then I started wanting to impress these German girls that I met. And the only way to do that for me was to sort of learn German. So that gave me a lot of impetus there. And then I lived in Amsterdam for 2 years. And there it was surrounded by Dutch people. Of course, they all speak English. But I ended up in situations where there's like 3 or 4 Dutch people together, and me. We'd start off in English, but pretty soon they start switching to Dutch, and they talk so quickly it was impossible for me to understand. So I just felt really sort of isolated. So that gave me a real push to learn Dutch. So I really started was really motivated to learn those languages, and then I sort of just start enjoy it as well, because it just feels so great when you're in a different country and you can just start saying something and they actually understand, and it just is so rewarding, and you get that spark of and it's a pity, because most English people never bother with learning languages, do they? Because everyone just speaks English.
It's so true, the rewarding feeling, and I think that especially comes when you're learning a language a little bit later, sort of after your school age, because you just bring in you just come to it with more of a sense of purpose, and impressing girls. You hear that a lot from guys. It doesn't really, the other way around,
No.
not as much. It's
Okay.
more as someone is already my partner and I want to learn it for them.
Yes.
Sorry, I have got a very chatty cat who doesn't speak human yet. Yes, Abby. So it's and travel is a huge motivator, but ultimately I think if you can get that feeling of reward, if you can get that feeling of success, that's so special. It's so special. It's something that we can get from lots of hobbies. It doesn't have to be language learning, but languages in particular really give you that. They're so rich. They open up the world. They bring us all together as people. They really help you understand somebody else's point of view.
Yeah.
And yet, because of school, we don't believe in language as a kind of positive hobby. And like you said, English people, not just English people, English native speakers all around the world, English native speaking countries, for many historical reasons, maybe because of some level of exceptionalism, but there's real cultural dominance all around the world. American shows, English pop music, they don't need to learn other languages, which means the whole way languages are taught is less from a point of view of joy and reward, and more from this point of view of should. And we should really make an effort. We should really look polite. Like when I go to Spain, I really should order a beer in Spanish, because that makes me culturally literate, and it doesn't really open anything up. It's not deep enough. And even justifications or kind of, I get this a lot with people asking me for advice on which language to learn, etc. Sorry, she's very eager today. This idea, for example, of the number of speakers, because we feel like, okay, we need to make some kind of calculation here and work out which of these languages is most worth my time. But I can tell you, for the last 5 years, I've been learning Welsh. It's incredibly rewarding, and it's minoritized language, and there are still way more Welsh speakers than I can ever talk to in my life.
Right. Okay.
So it's a different way of thinking about it. I just think, well, yes, there might only be 100,000 speakers, but it's not like I can talk to all 100,000 of them anyway.
Sure. Yeah, well, it's great just for the challenge. And of course, I suppose there are bits of the Welsh language in English, aren't there? So when you recognise like a word or something like that.
A few
far between.
Fewer than with Latin or Latin-based languages. So you'll get more lines between French and English. You get much more links between German and English, because English is Germanic,
of course,
whereas Welsh is Celtic. But yeah, this goes into nerd territory, so you don't want to hear about that too much.
Maybe not on the podcast, but I'll just say that I did listen to an audiobook by Melvin Bragg called The History of English, and it was fascinating how we started off all speaking those sort of Welsh type languages, and then we had all the migrants from the Holland and Germany and that sort of area, and then we started speaking, I think, Anglo-Saxon sort of languages, and then of course we got colonized by the Normans, and then we started introducing French and a lot of Latin into our language as well, which actually makes, if you grow up an English speaker, it's actually a great basis, because you've got bits of Latin-based languages and Germanic-based languages are already quite familiar to you. So I think
I mean, I want to just sort of be careful about the difference between like colonized and conquered.
Okay.
And that kind of thing, because it's slightly different to actual colonialism, right?
Okay.
And there's many hundreds of years in there, and many different ways that people were treated. But we can see developments as well in, say, African American vernacular English. But that's not the same, right? There's slave trade there. That's people being, not just displaced, people being essentially trafficked, and it's a whole different story. So around colonialism, it's a very specific way of referring to it. But again, not my place to make an online course about it.
No, but it is fascinating when you think of our language. It actually, every word that's come into our language, it has like a story behind it, and it's often, there's the whole, it's actually our whole history. It's quite fascinating once you start to realise that. But anyway, let's move on a bit to. So you teach German. You teach 1-to-1, and also you hold sort of retreats, don't you, where you all go away together and speak German together. Is that right?
Yes, I don't teach 1-to-1 anymore.
Oh, you don't? No.
No, I created a fairly big German course.
Okay.
For beginners. So I've got several online courses. I've got online courses if you want to be, if you want to get the grammar of German or the pronunciation. And then a few years ago, I worked together with a friend who's got a language learning business, and we created a very big course called German Uncovered, which will take you from beginner to a very comfortable intermediate level.
Really?
And I created the curriculum for that and taught the course as video lessons. So essentially that's what I do now. If somebody wants to learn German, I've got this self-paced product, which is much more cost effective and lots of fun.
Oh, okay.
But yes, I still host retreats after COVID, I hope.
Okay. So if someone wants to find out about that German course, what's the website for it?
Easy way of getting to it is to go to fluentlanguage.co.uk and then /for-German-learners.
Hang on, I'll share my screen, and then we can look at it together.
Sure.
So this is your website,
yes.
fluentlanguage.co.uk.
Yeah.
And then, so where do you say click on Learn Languages?
All right. Easiest way that you can get to the German specific page is if you just scroll down, and then in the footer, I've got language specific links.
Okay.
Yeah.
German resources. And what town is that?
You don't recognize it?
No.
It's Trier.
Oh, Trier. Okay.
Yes. I really love Trier. I've hosted a retreat there, and I used to live there because I'm from the Moselle.
Okay, great. And this is your...
And there you've got German Uncovered, you've got different German courses that I've created, a few other resources that I think are very useful.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you can kind of look around, and there's like a freebie that you can download and some blog articles. We've got lots going for the German learners.
Yeah, that's great. So, and this is on your own platform, this course.
Mm-hmm.
Is that Teachable you do it on?
This one's on Teachable, yeah.
Teachable, yeah. That's great. So, and also another thing about language tuition, because I remember at school I did French and German O levels, and I found it very demoralising, really, because I'd spend weeks and months learning about grammar and the genders, getting the gender right, and then conjugating the verbs, how you have some prepositions take the accusative tense, some take the dative tense, and that changes the word endings of the indefinite definite article and so on. And it is so mind-bogglingly complicated. And then I end up doing that. But then when I get it in front of a German person, or I'm incapable of saying any sentence basically in German. So the whole thing was a massive waste of time. Whereas now I think a lot of language tuition is, and also sometimes when I would manage to speak, it would just be in a horrific accent, because I learned it all from text, and I never really learned. But I've realised now that the way to learn is through your ears, and then repeating, and then you're a lot closer to the correct accent. And now, I think language teaching has changed a lot over the years, hasn't it? Or do you think that's right?
Certainly. In school teaching, it's different if you only learned in schools, right? In schools, you've got a lot of restrictions simply because you've got 30 kids in a classroom for 2 hours a week. You're not going to achieve much. No. You're not going to achieve fluency. It's just not a thing. That's not how language teaching works. So there's a whole structural kind of issue around it in terms of how you learn. How you acquire a language is there are 4 core skills: reading, listening, speaking, and writing. You kind of want to train all of them in a certain way. And what you've identified there with German, this sort of grammar fear almost, it's very, very common. And like I said before, I teach differently. And what is very generally not really done that much anymore. Again, I can't speak for schools because I have never been an MFL teacher. But what really isn't done anymore, and most people recognize that that's not an ideal way of going about it is to simply put a rule in front of somebody along with a few examples. Everything is out of context, and especially in a language like German, which is fairly complex in the way it changes, you can get entirely caught up in the grammar, and then you have exactly that problem that you've described, which is you just feel like you can't speak because there are too many things to consider, when in reality just use the wrong article. It's one letter, it's one tiny sound. As long as you're comprehensible, you're fine.
Yeah.
So the way, for example, we teach in German Uncovered is actually we've got a story that is beginner appropriate, and you read a chapter of the story entirely without assistance. That's the first thing that you do. So we just put some German in front of you and go, figure it out. Your brain naturally starts to make connections. You figure out so much more. And I've done this, honestly, I've done this with somebody who had zero German and was scared of German. And I tutored him through, I didn't tutor him really, I read the story out to him and I said, what can you figure out? What do you reckon that sentence means? And step by step by step, he almost without any assistance understood so much. And then, only then, I come in and I pick out different bits of the story and I say, oh, look at this bit. Here's what's happening there. Look at this. Do you see this pattern? Because language is all about spotting patterns. And I say, okay, do you see that there's an E here at the end of the word, and here, and here? The reason that happens is because of this. And especially with English natives, because you now, these days, definitely, English native speakers, I don't want to talk about now, but I'm talking about like maybe a generation after you, sort of my husband and younger type of generation, which were taught more conversational phrases, but not grammar. So school used to be really grammar heavy. Then it went to, let's just get away with all that. That doesn't work. So let's just teach everybody phrases, which also doesn't work. Because you need to teach people a system and the patterns and understanding. So what then would happen as well is that there isn't even an understanding of how English works. And if you don't understand your native language, you can't get to understanding your target language anywhere near as easily. Sometimes people will learn from sort of immersion and parroting and, you know, just kind of muddling through. And that kind of gets you there, but it's very difficult to replicate that if you're not surrounded by the target language. So work with input, lots and lots of input first. Like you say, speak. Also study the grammar rules. My approach to grammar is always, unless you're actually wondering why does it keep doing that, don't look up a rule.
Okay.
Right? You can just look up the rule when you need it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the perfect point in time.
Sure.
And it's how I learn my languages. It worked. It's worked for Welsh. It works for Chinese. It works for languages. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And I think also there's this idea that once you've learned one foreign language, it's much easier to then learn your second and your third. It gets easier to go on, just I suppose because you're I suppose partly because you're just so motivated and you sort of know you can do it. It gives you that confidence.
And could you get a sense of the system. You get a sense of what type of words there are. But you're right. It's knowing you can do it, especially again for English natives. It's so we Germans, or most people who don't speak English. The question doesn't come, can you do this? We don't have the luxury. We just have to.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
So for people who are English native speakers, it's that question isn't really there. So then you've got that space, and in that space, often people start to wonder if they even can do it. And of course you can. It's human. You learned English, so you're going to learn something else.
You must be shocked living here and seeing the level of ability of people to speak different languages other than English compared with someone like Germany.
I've lived here since 2003. So
I know.
I'm pretty familiar with what it is, and it just excites me. I'm shocked at some people, the level of excuses that they've built for themselves. So it's this whole wall that just of just really lies you're telling yourself. And that can be frustrating, because I also want to give people the space, and I want to give people the freedom to say, I just don't want to do it. I'm not that interested. Fine. But you don't have to make up some kind. It's that should feeling, right? So you feel like you need to justify if you don't want to do it. It's fine if you don't want to do it. But
I
if
think
you do, don't talk yourself out of it.
I think it's also good, I think, medically for your brain, isn't it? Especially as you age, in terms of mental deterioration. I have heard that's one thing that reduces the onset of Alzheimer's and things like that.
There is research that has evidence that research was on bilinguals. So we can make an assumption that the actual learning process and the pathways you create in your brain that translates. Can't say for sure whether it would, but I think the evidence is definitely there for a strong indicator.
Sure. Okay. So let's move on now to sort of course creation and marketing, because as a business model, I think it sounds fantastic. You do some work once, you create this product, you set up the marketing system, and then you create passive income, and that's it. You get income flow for the rest of your life. So this is sort of the holy grail. And I think, obviously, teaching languages is one example of that. But I think all of us have a sort of course inside us, because we all know something more than, we can all think of some other person that we know something more than they do. So they could learn from us. And if we can think of one person, if you scale that up, the millions of native English speakers, for example, we know there must be millions of people like that, millions of people who can learn from us from many different subjects that we know about. So we could, all of us pretty much, could create lots of courses. So I do think it's a fantastic opportunity, and it's something I'm particularly working on at the moment. And I have dabbled a bit in the past, and I have been quite unsuccessful, because I've thrown a few courses on Udemy and that haven't done very well at all. And looking back, I can see what I did wrong. I think the quality of the course and the sounds and everything wasn't very good. So, but it is something I want to get into again, and I want to start. In particular, I want to do some Excel courses, because I used to be an accountant, and I used to use Excel every day for many years, and I'm really, really good at it. So, so what would be your advice? And I know also there's these arguments about, should you use Udemy, or should you use Skillshare, or should you have your own platform? And so what would you be your basic sort of system or strategy if someone came to you asking for advice how to create and market a course?
Well, I'm curious why when you say your previous courses didn't work.
Yes.
What part of them didn't work? Did they not earn any money? Did they not get any sign-ups, or were the reviews bad, or all three?
Okay, so let's have a look. I can. I've done 2 of them as free, and one of them as I actually did 2 as a learning English course. I actually I hired someone to do a course for me, so I sort of produced it.
Oh, very entrepreneurial.
It was very entrepreneurial, and the sound was bad, and that sells about 1 a month, and so I think it's they tend to be about $10 total on Udemy, and I sort of get half that, so I get $5 a month for that. So that's not enough to live on. So the rating for that was 4.45. Now that is a very competitive, obviously learning is a very competitive area. So
4.45 is a good rating.
Yeah.
Udemy is. I've got 2 courses I think that still go on Udemy. I think I started on there. Let me just have a look. A course that I do on Udemy it's fascinating. I've had it on there for years, 3 or 4 years. And it's a course on online teaching. So I would highly recommend it if anybody's watching, and if you're a one-to-one tutor, or you want to do any kind of one-to-one coaching or tutoring, and you need to set up online. This year it's done really well because a lot of teachers have had to move online. It's called Live Lesson Strategies for Online Teachers and Tutors, I think it's called. So Live Lesson Strategies is the course.
I have actually bought it.
Have you?
As part of my research for the show. But just interesting to see what.
Nice, thank you.
Okay.
And it's this year. It for the last 5 years. It's kind of done this.
Yeah.
In terms of sales, every now and then there might be like a Black Friday promo where Udemy give it a push, and then it does a little bit of that. Since lockdown, it went up. I think suddenly the sign-ups went just quadrupled. It was crazy.
Okay.
But it's now dying off. But at the start of lockdown, that was the thing everybody wanted to learn about. And with Udemy, with my personal platform, I don't get these trends as much. But with Udemy, you kind of got your finger on that, and it's fascinating and it's interesting. So, but at the same time, in Udemy, you're in a competitive marketplace where, number one, your course has to stand out next to the other courses. So I think because mine's been there for a while and it addresses something very specific, right? One-to-one tutor, how to do your lessons, how to do your terms and conditions, etc. It's very specific, whereas a lot of courses kind of are a little bit more sensational in their copy. So they talk about how to I don't know, become a digital nomad and make a great living with this and that.
So what you're saying is sometimes it's good to niche down.
It is good to niche down.
Then you get less competition.
So you don't want to just go Excel. You want to really think about, okay, Excel who for? Excel for a household budget, right? And then you want to make it, especially in Udemy, because I think it's more lucrative in that big marketplace where things are generally sold quite low priced.
Yes.
You can do the big flagship course, and I know people who make good money with those big flagship courses. But if you're just starting out, and I think you're just trying out what works. Well, first of all, I would say your English course, if it's got that good reviews, you can absolutely do stuff with that. So I would play around with the copy, play around with the name. If you know the audio is bad, see if you can remaster or re-record the audio. You don't have to scrap it all. Just, try different things out with it.
It's a talking heads course, so you can't just re-record it. You'd have to get someone to actually do the whole course again.
If it's popular, remarket it. If you're not happy with it, let it go. And with Excel, I would then be really specific, and I would say, okay, name that specific version of Excel. Say if you're on Windows or a Mac or on a tablet, talk about what exactly you're doing with Excel. So you want to talk about household budget, or you want to talk about self-assessment, or you want to talk about profit and loss, or whatever it is, that specific thing, and then just get like how to use macros or something like that. So you really want to talk about what makes it very useful and specific. Whereas if you've got that kind of 101 course, you need to really throw everything at it. And I think I would be hesitant to do that on a platform where somebody else has it, unless you're the kind of person you take the course, you put it on Udemy, you're going to put the same course on Skillshare, put the same course here, put the same course there.
But that's my intention.
It's not how I do it, but I know that because I have my personal brand, I have a personal platform. I've got a podcast, so people buy from me because they know me already. Whereas in Udemy, people buy just because they're in the shop, right? So I'm like your vegan yogurt shop or whatever, where they get the really specialist stuff, and it's great stuff. Whereas Udemy is Tesco's.
Yes. So your advice you're selling on Udemy would be to make something very specific.
I would.
But is it better to? But my intention is to put it on Udemy, Skillshare, and Teachable, and also put some of them onto YouTube as well. So to have all of those sort of working together and feeding each other. So I'm not particularly expecting that much from Udemy, but that's sort of like a bonus, or at least some people might come across me from Udemy, and then I can email them and let them know about my new courses if I do anything.
In my experience, the most lucrative way of doing it is to just really work on your personal brand. Work on being known, work on making the connections, and then take it from there, right? And then also listen to your audience and see what they're interested in, see what they want to get more of, and then combine that with what you really, really want to make. So I have a new program at the moment. It's more of a coaching program than a course. The whole premise of it is at the start of the month, we get together, we plan your month, and then we check in at various points throughout the month. And for language learning, it works really, really well. And the reason I made it was I knew people would enjoy it, but also I was eager to help people out in that way. So it's gotta come together in that way.
So So yeah, I mean, I agree with building a personal brand, definitely, because that's the major part of my own business, to build my personal brand. No, unfortunately, the sort of brand I'm building on LinkedIn and other places is more to do with my business skills and marketing skills, not so much my Excel. So that's it's a whole different market. So, but I'm starting to build my brand on that. So I've created this website and YouTube channel, Excel Universe. So that's the brand I'm going to build on that, and I will be working on that. So it doesn't. So in terms of the platform, would you would you recommend Teachable and Udemy as both, and Skillshare? Just put it on all three.
On Teachable, there's no real discoverability. They're playing around with it.
Yes, I know. You'd have to market it from YouTube and other places, wouldn't you? Yeah.
Exactly. I can't give one specific piece of advice. It depends on whether you want to throw a lot of marketing effort at it, in which case you want to keep as much of your revenue as you can, which means Udemy would keep a big part of the revenue. It might not be quite what you're after, but if it's a small one, just to try it out, I'd say Udemy is great, and Udemy is a great place to start getting people interested, building trust, and then they move over to something else. I think you need to have some kind of bridge in between, really. So if somebody finds you on Udemy and they say, okay, I really like this guy, there's already a Udemy customer, so they're going to buy more on Udemy. So if you want to make good money on Udemy, I think you need to put out a lot of courses.
Yes.
But I'm not a Udemy expert, because personally I prefer doing Teachable. Oh, but it's not about Teachable. There's lots of platforms, Podia, Thinkific, whatever they have now. I prefer working my own brand because my revenue is more predictable. I know if I sell more, the percentage that I keep. So it depends on how much marketing effort you want to make.
Yes.
If you want passive income in the sense of passive, then Udemy is the way to go.
Yes, unless you can make a lot more money doing it the other way, in which case the other way is the way to go.
That's right, yeah. Passive income, as in lots of passive income. Like, you have passive income, but it's very rare that you get lots. It's like book royalties, right? You can write a book, put it out on Amazon. You're always going to get the royalties, but unless you really, really promote it, it's a huge marketplace along with lots of other things.
And there's this sort of idea of scalability. It's like sort of rolling a snowball down a hill. It sort of starts off a lot of hard work, but after a while it sort of starts to build its own momentum.
And just got to try it out.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to share the screen, and we'll just have a look through what you're doing marketing wise. So this is this is... That's your job.
Oh wow! Gosh, loads. Yeah, that's not my marketing. That's just my family.
That's your family.
That's it. Yeah.
They sell wine, fine, good hummus. So that's.
We've been making wine for hundreds of years. Yeah.
Your family. So you grew up in a winemaking family. That's great. Yeah. So and you offer this. You offer a lot of different things here. So language habit tool, membership group, teachers learn to teach online, which is.
That's my Udemy course. So there's a landing page explaining to you what the course is, and if you want to take the course, this links you through to Udemy, gives you a discounted voucher, and because you came through my voucher, Udemy lets me keep more of the revenue. Whereas if you found it in the browsing in the Udemy catalog, it's a different kind of transaction then.
Yes, so you keep 97% of the
exactly. That's how Udemy works, yeah.
But you don't get their email address.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And then your podcast.
Yes, I still blog occasionally, but I've kind of the podcast is a lot of work, so I don't really do as much on the blog anymore because I can't maintain the two of them at like the high quality that I would like. And the podcast is doing well and I enjoy doing it, so mostly there's a new podcast episode every week. That is probably where most people discover me now.
Yes, and what sort of, tell us sort of about the podcast. What sort of things do you discuss? What sort of people come and listen to it, and so on?
The podcast it's popular throughout the world. There's a listenership of about 5,000-6,000 people. In as much as you can measure listenership, it's not, podcast statistics are a little bit hit and miss. But this isn't a show that you listen to and I'm giving you a lot of German words and making you repeat them or something. This is a show about, as I say, living, loving, and learning languages. So I talk about anything interesting, and you can see, the page that you've got up right there, you can see the diversity of what I bring in. It's always language related. I've got a co-host who comes along once a month. Then we just hang out together. I'm recording with her this afternoon, where we talk about our own language learning experiences. Once a month, I've got a guest on. So I might have a linguist. I might have some people who are doing really interesting things with languages. What else have I had? I just got so many people. I've got psychologists, sometimes sociologists, so anything interesting to do with languages. And if I have the linguistic capacity, sometimes we'll make those shows bilingual, so we just switch languages throughout the interview. And then in the other weeks, I usually answer a listener question. So either from an online teacher, so every now and then there's a teacher chat type of episode, which is still really useful for the learner, but it's presented from a slightly different angle. And very often I answer listener questions from listeners with sort of a language dilemma. So the bilingual love episode was somebody who says that they're struggling to speak. They're a good Danish speaker.
Yes.
They're an expat living in Denmark, but they can't, so for some reason they don't dare speak to their wife.
Right.
So I talked about bilingual relationships and bringing language into the family, and shared a few tips and shared a few reflections on that. So there's everything really. Every week we find a new angle on how language and language learning influences our life, I think.
And so what's the breakdown by country of your listeners?
Don't know off the top of my head.
Oh, okay.
Mostly US, America, Canada, United Kingdom, Germany is quite popular. Got a good bunch of Australians, but the spread is really wide.
So it's So would you say it's mostly people who have English as their first language?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, it's a show in English about good strategies and interesting things to do with learning another language.
Yeah, I mean it's a great it's a great idea. It's a real niche idea, but I mean, I don't know of any show.
Yeah, we are.
I don't know of any shows like it, but I imagine that there's a lot of people. It's an interest. If you are learning a language, then you do find this sort of thing quite interesting.
That's it. Yeah.
So, yeah.
And some people even listen, and they're not actually language learners, but they just enjoy the topic. I think that's the pleasure of podcasts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a good show. I'd recommend it to anyone. You just give it a listen and see if you enjoy it.
So. And you say this is your main source of traffic, of leads, of sales, would you say?
I think so. I think the blog, because of the age of the blog and because a few of the articles are quite SEO focused, so I will have lists of the 9 best podcasts for learning Spanish and the 9 best podcasts for learning French, etc. And people Google that kind of stuff. So I get a lot of traffic through the website. The website always has generated a lot of traffic.
Yes.
But I think the podcast is the trust builder.
Okay, and so the trust builder, and then what products they listen to the podcast, and then what product of yours do they buy? Do they buy your sort of how to speak German course, or do they buy your sort of how to create a course? Depends
on who they are, and depends on what the podcast episode is about. You might argue that I've got a really bad marketing link from one to the other, but to be honest, people get curious about me, and it does seem to work, because there's nowhere you could click that specifically says courses or anything. So maybe that's something I should do.
Right. Yeah.
But you can click newsletter here. So on the whole, the idea of the whatever marketing funnel is people, sign up to my newsletter. They hear from me regularly. There's a free German course that you can sign up for that explains the story-based method to you a little bit more. And at the same time, I will email you a 10% voucher that you can use for any of my courses. So it's a little bit less of a hurdle. If you want to purchase a course, you know, you've got a discount there as well. You can try it out. And that helps a lot of people kind of get over the first hurdle of trust. And yeah, so there's lots of different ways that I promote things, but the Language Habit Toolkit is my flagship kind of core product. That is, I think it's about $70, depending, plus VAT, possibly, depending on where you're buying it. And that's
this one.
More of a, yes, it's more of a course that teaches you how to get organized, how to organize yourself in language learning. So it's a great one for people who have tried for a while and might be a little bit frustrated. So you can see it shows $70 there. That's the UK price, including VAT. I think if you're not in the UK, you see a different price. If you're in Germany, you see a different price, because that's how digital VAT works.
Okay, and how long is it?
It's very, very short because it's hardly video based, but at the same time, it's very, very long because it's all about you doing something. So it's I've written a book. You get the book with the course, and then it's sort of a worksheet based system.
Okay.
So you actually work yourself, you work through it yourself, create your own routine. It's been very important. It's based on how I learn languages. So I started creating this routine, then I worked on it with a group of beta testers to develop it.
Yes.
And see what people need. So for example, there's a review system that wasn't there in the first place, but people really needed it. And the core of it is the handbook. There's only really one video in it, and I think there's a bonus webinar if people want to watch it. But this was quite a risk. When I launched it, it was quite a risk, because if you think online courses, on the whole, you expect a lot of video, and this isn't a lot of video. This is, I wanted it, you know, I'm a teacher, right? So I wanted it to be not about people just consuming. I wanted it to be a little bit more about working your way through it, creating your own individual routine. And, you know, I wanted to help you generate those insights. So that's what this is. It's more of a coaching tool than anything else.
Okay, that's interesting. So,
yes, it's fun.
And, I mean, the idea of, you know, if I wanted to learn Italian, for example, you know, most people just like, you get lessons about how to learn Italian, but you're suggesting what they should do is to buy this toolkit as well and work their way through the toolkit, and then they will be able to learn Italian a lot faster, because they will be using your system, how to learn languages.
Not necessarily a lot faster, because I don't believe that learning really is ever finished. So I think faster is a fallacy.
Right.
Perhaps.
Yes, that's a good point, actually, yeah.
I think what something like this does is it helps you keep going. I've had people who have told me that they've tried and failed to learn French 3 times before, and they needed a way to keep themselves organized, accountable, and get clarity over what they're actually doing, because self-teaching, we don't get taught how to self-teach.
No.
And that's what this does.
Okay, and that's an interesting point, that we never fully master another, well, it's quite rare, I should think, but
the idea that we'd be finished is a fallacy, really.
Yeah, and also it can be quite frustrating, because you think, because you tend to look at always think of how bad you are at a language, rather than congratulate yourself for the progress you've made. And it's more about the journey, embracing and enjoying the journey, that really, I suppose, would keep us motivated, rather than just being frustrated. I mean, it is frustrating because
now you understand my job.
I do your job, but I know that even languages, well, Dutch is the language I speak the best, but I only really understand it if they speak slowly. Once they start to speak at the sort of pace we're going, it's almost impossible to keep up. So, you know, it can be frustrating. Listening to radio and stuff.
That's not fixed. None of that is fixed. You can train yourself to do that, but you have to want to. You know.
Yeah, you have to want. Well, it's time, isn't it? You can't do everything. So, Yeah, how do you choose to spend your time? Okay, so that's that. So you don't, in terms of, you don't do, the only course you do how to teach courses is this one on Udemy that you do?
I run a membership. I run a
Ah,
membership for online teachers who want to take it a little bit further,
right.
which we've just done a big, yeah, well, the way we did our marketing push for the last month was that we ran an event. We ran a little event called the Teach and Thrive Summit. The membership's called Teach and Thrive, and I run it together with a friend. And we run a membership for language learners. We run a membership for language teachers. And Teach and Thrive is for mostly one-to-one teachers, but not just one-to-one teachers, and mostly language teachers, but not all of them are language teachers. It's for people who want to take an online teaching business sort of one further. And the way that we run the membership is to let people vote on what they want to be taught next month. And then we create a live masterclass and a workbook, like quite a substantial workbook to take people through what they want to do. So I know this month I covered how to set up a content plan. Next month, my friend and colleague Lindsay it's her turn, and she's going to teach us how to do Instagram, how to market on Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah, and so every month and over time we're building up quite a good substantial archive, and these masterclasses they're solid. There's a lot in there. I'm very proud of Teach and Thrive, and I'm looking forward to doing the next marketing push for it. So that's coming.
That's great. So how do people find out about that?
It's kind of a little bit hidden at the moment. If
Yes.
you happen to listen to a podcast where I mention it, you will know it's there. It's not a secret, but at the moment it's a little bit quiet because we're just settling in the new members, etc. And we're then waiting to put out the next marketing, kind of the next promo. And again, you will see it if you've bought the Udemy course. In the Udemy
Okay.
course, the last lecture tells you about Teach and Thrive a little bit. So you've got it right there.
Learn more with Teach and Thrive.
That's it. But it's not
Okay.
for people who are just getting started. We've got some people who are complete newbies, but for people who are just getting started, not everybody is quite at the level. Not everybody wants to think about this as a business yet. Some people take the Udemy course and they just want to get a bit of part-time money, and they don't want to start a full-on online teaching business. And other people, they want to run it as a business. And Lindsay and I have both been doing this for best part of a decade each, so we're starting to know what we're doing, I would say.
Okay, so it's about how to run and market a teaching business.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of now, if someone wanted to teach English, well, I mean, everyone's got their own native language. I mean, can they just set themselves up as a teacher of that language, or do they have to go on teacher training? Because it is a bit of a skill, isn't it, to teach a language?
Oh, I have a great podcast episode about that this week that I would very strongly recommend to you and your listeners if you're interested in that. It's just the latest one. So it's the one about what it takes to become a professional tutor. It's a little bit focused on italki in particular, but I also talked about, to me, what professionalism means, because I have worked in offices, etc., but I've never been a hierarchy-friendly person, and I've never really been a suit and tie kind of person.
Yeah.
I'm fairly, even in, we talked about Toastmasters earlier. People know about me that I'm casual.
Yes.
On the whole, and it's just the way I am, but I get things done,
Well, I agree. I mean, I'm like that as well, and I think a lot of these courses about how to be a language teacher, and they have a whole school, and you have to do the sort of this 3-year course, and then at the end of it, you get a certificate, and it's a lot of it is about them sort of making money, and who knows that person is better at teaching English than someone who's learned a sort of a different way. So, are you saying that? So can you summarize what your message is in this podcast?
On the whole, the professionalism is different from having a qualification. And to me, and again, I'm talking about the one-to-one tutor because this answers a question from somebody who is one-to-one tutoring. And their specific question was how to go from community tutor to professional tutor status on the italki platform. But I wanted to address professionalism first. So I talk about what professionalism means to me: turning up on time, focusing on your clients' outcomes, having the expertise and representing yourself accurately, not grandstanding or anything and over-promising.
Yeah.
And having solid terms and conditions so that you know what happens when somebody cancels. And these are just things I've learned over the years of teaching and running retreats and running the business, really. And then I also talked a little bit about the qualifications and where it's really useful to have the qualification and what on italki again, what a learner might need and want to expect from a community tutor versus what a professional tutor is like.
So what can you define in terms, what's the difference between a community tutor and a professional tutor?
These are italki terms. Italki is a platform where you really, if you want to get started as an online tutor and you just want to get some students and try it out, I would say italki is probably the best place to do it. And if you're looking for one-to-one language lessons, italki is an amazing place to find your tutors. It's a booking platform. And
I have actually used it. I've hired someone to teach Dutch, actually, to refresh my Dutch when I talk it.
Yeah.
So
I've had Chinese tutors, Icelandic tutors, my Welsh tutor I book through italki.
Okay.
It's a really handy platform. It's not the only way, but it's a good platform.
So anyone can create a profile on italki and say they can teach their language, and then they get bookings, you know?
Anyone can do it as a community tutor, and if you want to know what it takes to get the professional status, you have to listen to this episode.
And as a community tutor, and a professional one means that they will market you differently and you can probably charge more money. Is that right?
I think that's what a lot of people assume.
Is that correct?
It's, well, what you charge, again, platform, right? What you charge should first of all be based on how much money you need in your life and how much money you need from tutoring. And I think there will be community tutors. For example, if your community tutor lives in Norway, they're going to always charge more than if they live in Vietnam, because living costs are a huge factor in all of this. And people don't always really, I think some people will book a lot of lessons on italki and almost forget that they're booking a human being who needs to get paid, and then say, well, this is really expensive. And you're like, well, someone's giving you an hour of their time and they're preparing. Generally, a professional status tutors will prepare a little bit differently. They might have different career experience. They might have different experiences, and they'll bring more structure to the table than a community tutor. And they tend to be the ones who are doing this job full time. Yeah. Doesn't mean they're always charging more. Yeah. Again, my Chinese tutor I think she lives in Chongqing, and her cost of living, or like what, you know, once we've factored in exchange rates and all that kind of stuff, her cost of living is lower than mine. So to me, her lessons are pretty cheap. Okay, but supposing someone thinks, oh, that's great, I want to be an English teacher, so they get an italki account and set up a profile. But how do they learn? And then they start a lesson and then they don't know what to do. How do they learn how to actually help someone learn the language? You can take a qualification. You can just go in and figure it out. And I think if you really don't know what you're doing, then you should admit that to yourself and price low. Yes. And learn. You can learn by doing. You can help somebody a lot more. And you can work with a student and kind of get them to help you out. But I think if you don't know at all what you're doing, you want to practice, maybe a language exchange would be a good idea. So if you are learning, say you, for example, want to get a bit of Dutch practice, find somebody who's Dutch who wants a bit of English practice, do half an hour each way. And that way you kind of get used to the one-to-one environment. Yeah. And I did this as a German tutor at the start. And I hadn't tutored necessarily before, but I know how language works. Yeah, my first lessons were on italki and local flyers in Lancaster, where I lived at the time. Okay. I just got myself some textbooks and I thought, okay, let's see what you need to know. So textbooks, textbooks how to speak German. And so you got some ideas from that day, did you, about some lessons to give? And over time you learn what works. Yeah. Excuse me. Okay, so you do a mixture of, delivering the lesson and just conversation as well. And some people would want more conversation and some people would want more structured learning and so on. Okay, so there's no actual
course you did how to be a German teacher?
No, I didn't.
No, well, that's fine. And you're obviously very successful because you're obviously, your whole career now is based on teaching language.
Yeah, I have tutoring experience from being really young. I used to tutor a little bit.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of language awareness, and because I've done a master's and stuff in language, so I had something to bring to it. But I was saying on the podcast, if Italki has tightened its certificate requirements now, so I used to get professional status without necessarily submitting a teaching specific qualification. I think on Italki that's not the case anymore. Now you have to.
So this is an incredible opportunity. There's so many, unemployed people in England and or in any country, and all of us really, we could be on Italki teaching our languages to each other.
You can teach people something. I think people think that, online courses are the only way that you can you can teach online, but I believe that doing a little bit of one-to-one is a really great way of keeping in touch with the people that you are actually making your online course for. And the real thing you want to do is answer the questions that they have, not tell them what you've already learned. In that way, you have to. The more you teach from their perspective, the better you teach.
It's a way of learning how to teach, isn't it? But it's a pity that there's not Italki for. I mean, that's for language, but it's a pity there's not one of those for all these other subjects we can teach.
There may be. I'm just not aware of it. There probably is. I mean, it's the internet.
One. It's that's great. But of course, but I think. There is a limit to how much you can charge, isn't there? Because obviously a lot of people are doing it. So your hourly rate as one-to-one, unless you've got this big, massive personal brand, it probably wouldn't be a massive amount. So that would be part of the reason, I suppose, to then go into creating info products.
I think you should check out this podcast episode.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
I will do, yeah.
Yes, and the links for it. There's a lot of really good stuff that it kind of goes exactly where your mind is going right now.
How to make money. Yes, okay.
It's important. And I often, there might be a lot of language teachers are, and I'm going to go and say it, like, especially like all language teachers who kind of come and do it for the passion, and then especially women, I think there's a certain hesitation to I don't want to say charge what you're worth, because that's such a fallacy.
Yeah.
But it is kind of true, and there's this feeling that if you're thinking about earning money, or if you're thinking about how you're going to make a living, that's somehow a bad thing, because your intentions are not as pure. And something that definitely I've learned the hard way, and I really want to provide for teachers, and that we do in the membership in Teach and Thrive, is we talk about, is this lucrative? Is this the right way to to do something for yourself, and and keep yourself going? Because to be honest, after 5 years of doing this kind of work, you're just that much better at it. You're that much more valuable, but you can't get there if you are undercharging. You're burning yourself out. You're getting too frustrated at the start. And this happens quite frequently. So I really love doing Teach and Thrive, because I'm helping fellow online teachers with the business side of things. And this job kind of forces you to think about the business side of things. So even if you're not entrepreneurial, from that point of view, it teaches you how to be resourceful.
Well, definitely, because you realise, the more you understand the business side of things, you could just scale up what you do and make more money, like the easier way, rather than just spending a lot of time at a very low hourly rate and so on. Well, we've been speaking for a whole hour, so I could go on all day, but obviously I'm respectful of your time and all our viewers, listeners' time.
Yeah, I've got work to do.
You've got work to do. Do you have any final words for anyone, for our listeners?
Just to encourage, I think definitely it just happens to have this podcast episode, this particular one. Do check it out. It's a really good place to start. If you've got something to teach, just try it out. And if you think maybe you have something to teach and you don't quite know how to structure it yet, then think about think about what do people need to know, and ask people what kind of questions they have, and then put out a product and commit to improving it at least once.
Right.
So never quite the finished product, put it out, a little bit lower priced, and then maybe close it down, improve it, and then put out version 2, and version 2 is always going to be better.
Yeah, that's great advice. Okay, so so thank you very much, and to all our listeners, thank you for listening and watching, and hopefully you found all this extremely useful, as did I, and see you next time.